Spags, it's time for another splash play doubleheader. You and me battling it in the Best Ball Mania 4 streets for $3 million.
No better place to stream against your pal. Of course, both of us drafting teams together in BBM4. And Pete, I am honored today because I get to take the place of a cartoon duck with a cup of coffee who I have more questions about, Pete, than you're possibly prepared for.
I'm here to answer them. I'm an open book. It seems pretty straightforward to me, but happy to, yeah, if you're struggling with it, I'll definitely help you out.
Question number one, what's the duck's name is what I have. Or here's the side question. Is it like Duck Pete? Because he's got the backwards hat. He's got a little bit of he's in shape. He's got a coffee mug. Those were the two things that went through my brain first.
I hadn't named him yet. I think you're the only one that is, had a hard time falling in love with him because you don't know the name. I kind of like him being an avatar that you can just project whatever you want onto him. So yeah, if you want to call someone in the comments, I think called him Bill. I don't know why, but yeah, he can be whatever you want him to be.
Bill, the best ball breakfast duck feels a little bit wordy. Coffee the duck, maybe? Pori the cup?
I think we could come up with something a little more steamy. I'll workshop it for you and I'll come back, Spags, so you can have a name.
Okay, I appreciate that here. Of course, this is the usual best ball breakfast timing, which is a splash play. And Pete, reminder to your banner as well. This is number 38 for you, 39.
That's actually good. Let me double check because I did one on ETR yesterday, so I just have to remember. Yeah, this will be 39.
All right, so number 39 here. You're closing in on 40. Is this pace we're about in line with where you expected? Are you getting a little sweats here that you got to crank up the stream output?
I haven't done the exact math, but I feel like I'm on a pretty good pace. And I haven't even pulled a couple levers. I'm going to start mixing in a couple underdog cardio club drafts. So maybe on the weekend, I might just do one where I just run for, an hour and a half on my new treadmill desk while drafting. So we might be doing some stuff like that. And then I can always add a little marathon stream if I really need to chip away at it. But I feel like I'm going on a good pace.
Speaking of a good pace, I'm not on a great pace at Jamar Chase so far. I am under the doctor-prescribed 8% that everybody else in the field will have, or the overall field will have. So I am going to take Jamar Chase here at the 2-hole. And Pete, you are not even on my screen, so I presume you are drafting late on the board once again.
Yeah, 110, I believe. Someone in the comments said they feel like I'm getting all the late slots lately. It does feel like that a little bit. Do I write this room? This room seems, I recognize our guy, John Kelly, MMA thought leader here from the 11 hole. This doesn't seem like quite the friends and family draft we're used to.
Yeah, I think we did keep it pretty on the QT here. Pete and I got in right before the stream. And of course, if you are ever trying to draft us, normally we're hopping in about a minute before the stream starts. So that's the best way to do that. But definitely a unique room here. So maybe some values, maybe some RB pigs in the room, Pete. Maybe you actually get to make some good picks in the 10 hole.
It'd be fun. It'd be fun. Like the team I did with, I drafted with Hertzik on ETR yesterday, and that room was unlike any of my other rooms. We got this true zero RB room where we had a Lamar team that we were able to just super cleanly double stack with Bateman and Zay Flowers. All the zero running back targets were there. Other than someone sniping us on Brock Purdy, it was a very clean draft. And so, sometimes it's nice to not be bum hunted and draft with some randos.
You almost had AJ Brown following you, but are you going to take the Bijan bullet here?
I'm not actually. You can see here I'm weirdly light on CD Lamb for no specific reason. Just has not fallen to me where I draft. So I'm going to go ahead and grab CD Lamb here.
Okay, definitely not a bad pickup there. Certainly CD Lamb, a guy that stands to hold his role, even though Dallas is probably going to be a little bit more of a run-heavy, maybe slog-it-out team. Did briefly link them to DeAndre Hopkins, some of the reports out there, but it doesn't seem like that's the most likely given their cap situation. And in fact, they already got Brandon Cooks. But there goes Devontae Adams. This room can go either way for me, Pete. I feel like I've seen some running back pig rooms lately because of more casuals coming in. And there's a guy, Pete, who chases me around in every stream we do, pointing out with a Denny Carter style zero RB meme, like, these running backs aren't going to be quite enough to get there. And it's like, I think that's where we are in draft season, as people really loving their running backs and not knowing the best ball structure that you talk about so much.
I know. Yeah, it was fun. Hertzik posted our zero RB team we drafted. I think Devin A-Chain was our first running back at pick 116 or something. And scrolling through some of the comments, it was nice to be taken back to people who are shocked that you would go zero RB. We just these rookies. I mean, how are you going to have any running back production available? I'm going to grab Jalen Waddle here because I don't have a lot of CeeDee Lamb. I know for sure I do not have any CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Waddle team. So that feels like a fun combo.
If Amon-Ra St. Brown had fallen there, would you have taken him at 15, even though that is a chalk correlation, as you pointed out before?
Yeah, I think I would have. Yeah. And I was listening, Eric Beimfor and Pat Crane have been doing a podcast together and they were kind of talking through it. And it is one of those things too. They made the point, we joke about it being a chalk combo, but it's like a chalk combo in our very, very hyper specific niche neck of the woods, where the majority of drafters, and there are just so many different ways to get unique. The lesson for me is not avoid Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb. The lesson is just make sure that you're not forgetting there are other ways to stack up that game. And you're going to want other permutations of that. You're going to want a CeeDee Lamb with a Jahmyr Gibbs. You're going to want an Amon-Ra with a Tony Pollard, like kind of thinking through those angles. So it's the easiest and comfiest of that game to stack up just because the ADPs are directly correlated. So that's my only note with it. I don't think it's bad though.
Yeah, and the high upside wide receiver one correlation is always going to be the ones that give you the biggest ceiling. So that's something that certainly is there, but everybody knows about that for the most part. So there are ways to get different. And I definitely have taken some CeeDee Lamb, Jahmyr Gibbs combinations. I think that's a pretty nice one to get to. That gets you a little bit different there. I'm kind of curious, Pete, about people also asking 0% Chubb. So Beimfor did an article, and this is going to be the Eric Beimfor hour, I guess, to start it off here, writing about how even 0RB guys like you and me, who really do love 0RB builds, get tempted by the second round running backs, get tempted by a falling Tony Pollard and all of that. Have you found yourself kind of having to mentally go, hey, yeah, I do love 0RB builds and want to force my way to them more? Because that's been a big focus for me over the last week and a half.
Sorry, say that part again. I was responding to a comment in the chat.
Just because of the running back pockets being a little more plentiful and even appealing to 0RB guys, are you finding yourself that you kind of have to force yourself to be more 0RB this year?
Well, yeah. And again, I always have to offer the caveat. A lot of my best ball breakfast and ship chasing rooms, I just am not able to set up the 0RB rooms in a way I'd like. But I think in general, the ADP landscape is extremely conducive for 0RB because from rounds, 9 to 13, I mean, all of those are just great zero running back selections. They're this year. Historically, that's where we've seen 0RB breakout picks. The rookies often emerge from there. You can think Kenneth Walker last year and previous years. That's where the Nick Chubb came from, the Alvin Kamara. Like that is such a nice range. And you wake up there and you have all of these Dolphins backs. You have all of the Bears backs. You have all of the Saints backs, all of these ambiguous backfields with so much opportunity. And it really does line up well to take care of other positions through 7 or 8 rounds and then pivot there. So the board is very conducive to 0RB.
Yeah, this board, though, not so much. We are in a little bit of a wide receiver avalanche. Man, I do not like deviating twice here. I think I'm going to reach for Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley's ADP is starting to come up a little bit here at 31.8 now. But I took Mahomes and have Jamar Chase, so that's a little week 17 correlation. And taking Calvin Ridley, Pete, I think you're going to end up in a better pocket than I was here because it was literally all running backs or reach for a receiver.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting one because I normally am like plugging my nose if I have to take Calvin Ridley at pick 34 at the back end of the 3rd round there. But what, did you get buried by the wide receiver avalanche? Yeah. So, and it does put you in a bad spot there. I mean, I'm always just going to take the running back in that spot. Like I'm just not reaching for Calvin Ridley there. And I think guys like Ramondre Stevenson and Josh Jacobs have top 5 overall upside. And I do also know at the 4-5 turn where you're there, like you're going to be in Terry McLaurin, Michael Pittman, all that range. So I would have just grabbed my running back. But when you take that elite detour for the QB, it does start to get hard. Like if you make the elite early QB detour, then you make the bell cow running back detour, you can get behind at wide receiver in a room like this. So the Mahomes pick, I think, ended up kind of hurting you a little bit there as far as your kind of total flexibility about how to handle this room, I would say.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I think you mentioned that in some of your streams you've done with Pat and Sean Siegel. Of course, Pete does those on Wednesday, same timing here as the Splash Play doubleheader. That's one that I've observed you go through on stream before, so I've been a little more conscious of not trying to take, let's say, Mark Andrews there in Mahomes or a running back in Mahomes. But I do think the Week 17 correlation with Jamar Chase is nice enough, and obviously Mahomes does have some late targets to go to. I am still a fan of Kadarius Toney, still okay with Sky Moore and Rashee Rice at the end of drafts or a little bit later in drafts rather. So I'm willing to go there here, but I agree. Maybe running back would have been the move. And I actually would have gotten Mahomes and Tony Pollard if he fell one more spot, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm looking at this board right now. I'm on the clock with a CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Waddle start. My heart wants to take Debo and keep going wide receivers, but I am going to go ahead and just use the Waddle opportunity to take Mark Andrews. Couple picks past ADP. I still love the elite tight end builds, and just going to use that correlation there as the tiebreaker to grab Andrews over Debo.
Yeah, Miami-Baltimore is probably my most exposed Week 17 game so far this year, which I'm pretty happy about. Though I guess last year I think my most exposed one was San Francisco-Las Vegas, which ended up being perhaps not so good in terms of the stacking partners in that one with the Darren Wallers and Trey Lances of the world. But I feel like Miami-Baltimore, and it might be a little biased. Obviously, that game did go off in a major way last year. But in terms of Week 17 games, I don't see that stacked up as much as I would have thought. But I love getting one of Tyreek and Andrews, one of Waddle and Andrews. I think those were nice starts.
Thank you, Tyler, for the super chat. Let's keep this one in our back pocket as Spags and I go throughout the draft. Tyler asking, is one guy going to absolutely hang dong in week 17 that no one sees coming? Spags and I will give our sleeper week 17 hero at some point during the show today. Let's see. Let's keep grabbing a wide receiver in this room. We'll get an Amari share. One thing about, and I could have made this same argument with Christian Watson, who I select more often. One nice thing about the CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Waddle, Amari Cooper is this pairs up really well with, Dak, Tua, and Deshaun Watson, all going in a similar range of the draft. And so what my brain immediately does is often I'm taking running backs in that range. Right now I have a 0 RB build. This might be a team where I finally take the round 5 or round 6 detour for a running back. I haven't been getting a lot of Aaron Jones, J.K. Dobbins. I don't mind those guys, even Dameon Pierce, Joe Mixon types. I've been wanting to find myself in some structures that allow me to make a smart running back pick in that range, knowing I have those quarterback picks that I might be selecting where I normally take running backs. I might make that change today.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm worried. Okay, I guess ATN's not going to fall any further. It's weird because McLaurin went early, Judy going a little bit early, some of these guys going a little bit later. So it feels like half a wide receiver avalanche room and half not. But I guess we're going to see what falls back my way because I think I'm going to end up in a pocket of DJ Moore or with no Fields, Kirk. Like I don't love the way this is shaking up for me so far.
Yeah, I'm gonna, I can tell you're a little frazzled. I'm gonna get a coffee pour, get your mind right here, Spags. You'll feel really good after this.
That's what I need the most.
There you go. Yeah, this is a crazy start from JIC 5-6 there. Diggs, Barkley, Najee, ETN.
Yeah, I mean, you've talked about not being a big Barkley guy in terms of where he falls, in terms of the pockets. I'm not a Barkley guy overall. I'm certainly more of a volume player from where I sit than a guy who's been good in any sort of advanced analytics. And no values coming back my way either. Watson goes at 44. So I think I might end up having to do a weird, well, we'll see. I might have to go Jacksonville coming up and then maybe also take Trevor Lawrence.
Spags, Gibbs is a smash at 47 if you get him here.
If he falls.
Yeah, this is another thing like Spags, like going back. I mean, I get the Mahomes stuff for sure with that week 17, but I've had a hard time doing Mahomes with Chase, just knowing that Burrow is always there at 4'11 and 5'2. Do you ever take those guys together, or do you ever pass on Mahomes knowing Burrow's going to often be there?
No, I mean, I take Mahomes. I took Mahomes and Burrow once on a stream you did, but let me figure this out here. So if I take Kirk, I'm live to get, I think, a unique pairing of Mahomes with Trevor Lawrence. If I take Gibbs here, I'm certainly covering running back, but I am going to be still behind the 8 ball at wide receiver a little bit. I am going to eschew Pete's guidance here and take Christian Kirk and then maybe take Trevor Lawrence and hope he falls.
Wow. Yeah, I think that was a mistake because I think the ADP value you're getting back on Gibbs there kind of helps offset the big reach on Calvin Ridley. And now Trevor Lawrence, his ADP is 64. You pick at 71. You definitely have cornered the market on Jags. Maybe the ETN guy does something, but then it gets really dicey. Again, I don't mind getting sniped on quarterback, but it is a little tougher to hope he falls to 71, especially after you've already spent early capital on a quarterback.
Young Doug seems like he times out on Gibbs there. So Young Doug, also the worst rap name in history, if we're going to go with him.
Thank you, KZ. A very healthy pour. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think people really love the poor Pete, and I don't want to get in the way of it. But sometimes you don't do it on splash play, which ironically, splash sounds all in effect there. Okay, all right, we got some interesting players
Wow.
here.
Kenneth Walker's 3 straight here. Yeah, young Doug might be getting buried here by the Avalanche.
More like Boomer Doug with all those running backs. Got 3 receivers, 1 QB. I'm gonna get weird here. I'm gonna take Joe Mixon.
All right, there you go. Building out your Bengals, Chiefs, week 17 here. JGFC, whose rankings you got? I still got Pat's rankings in my system. Pat's been I've just kind of liked how aggressive he was early on. And I think he's got a really good finger on the pulse. Obviously, the ETR guys and Leone do an awesome job with their rankings too. But in a way, because so many people use ETR rankings, like as an example right now, Rondale Moore is screaming up draft boards because ETR, I believe, has him ranked at 115th overall. And so I almost view drafting off of ETR ranks as drafting off of ADP. It's like if most people are looking at ADP and the second most people are looking at ETR ranks, it is nice to have a little bit differentiated thought or rankings there. But I will say, I will probably in the next few weeks, I will drop all rankings out and draft exclusively off of ADP.
So you wouldn't even have them as like a framework then? I guess it does change the screen, so you do kind of want to do that. But you could do a blended. Blended might be fun. That's a way to get different.
Yeah, but that's also going to be like a lot of added work that I'm not going to do. The beauty of, Pat's leg up rankings or the ETR is it's just a quick CSV upload there to the site.
It's a quick run to CVS to get the rankings. Marco asking where can he get Pat's rankings? So give the big plug here, legendaryupside.com. Of course, Pat's working hard there. YouTube channel for Pat also going well. So go check out Pat's content, but certainly support the new guys launching a thing. Legendary Upside, Pat's new venture. And you get some good deals on there as well with the underdog credits and all that.
All right, so just as I kind of set it up, J.K. Dobbins, a guy I like, have not selected yet in Best Ball Mania because I'm almost always selecting a wide receiver here, but kind of how I mentioned with how I think this is going to break for me, not using an early pick on a quarterback. I'm going to use this as a green light to take J.K. Dobbins, build out my bet here with this Baltimore-Miami game. Dobbins, a couple picks past ADP, and also there wasn't a screaming wide receiver value. I was going to select Pittman there at 58 if he fell. Instead, I knew I got these 2 Seattle wide receivers. I got Evans, I got Ayuk. So I knew I would like whatever wide receiver I had at pick 63 and grab that, modified anchor RB that's correlated at 5'10.
Isn't Dobbins, I mean, well, I guess, yeah, it's round 5, round 6 would be a traditional 0 RB, but that's pretty close to the modern kind of draft board layout for this year. Like, I feel like Dobbins to me kind of seems like a 0 RB start, even though it's technically not.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and this is kind of where he hovered last year too. He was always at like the 5-6 turn. I think my preferred definition for 0 RB when I'm looking at data is no running back through the first 5 rounds. So he is kind of right on that bubble. And then, I think even sometimes when you take Jahmyr Gibbs, and I would say he falls more, not where he went in this draft, but in general, that's really on the fringe of are you going to call that a cheap anchor RB? I almost would rather view Gibbs as a really premium 0 RB start, right? Because he might be slow to start out of the gate. I actually think that's the most realistic outcome. You're drafting Jahmyr Gibbs for weeks 15 through 17. That's where you're hoping he just goes nuclear. And so then I'm going to start thinking about the rest of my running back selections with that in mind. And I think I'm going to view J.K. Dobbins similarly. I'm not going to view J.K. Dobbins as a true anchor in the way I would a Ramondre or a Pollard or a Jacobs. I am going to think about him more as a luxury 0 RB start.
Yeah, I love J.K. Dobbins. He's a guy I start a lot of my running back runs with. 23.4% of him I have. As I mentioned, I do have a lot of Miami, Baltimore, so that's correlated a lot with J.K. Dobbins too. But I think he's the one guy in that range. I do like Miles Sanders, but he falls a little bit sometimes. Don't usually take Mixon, but obviously kind of made sense for this build with a little bit of Cincinnati KC going. But to me, Dobbins, I think in that range, I don't know if you feel differently, but Aaron Jones, Dobbins, Damian Pierce, DeAndre Swift, Miles Sanders, I think Dobbins kind of appeals the most out of that group.
Yeah. And one thing I have to be careful with, I have my favorites in that group. I love Kenneth Walker. I like Dobbins. I like Aaron Jones. I think Miles Sanders is a really bad pick. But like the point is they're all dead zoney running backs a little bit, but at least J.K. Dobbins has a profile that isn't entirely dependent on massive volume to get there. We know Dobbins can rip off big plays, very explosive. And so if you're making a bet on the Ravens offense taking the leap, you could really see him being the beneficiary of a supercharged offense. Spags, what are you doing here?
I'm going to take George Pickens with my first pick here. Really would have liked Kadarius Toney to fall, but nothing is falling in this room that I would like to see, including Trevor Lawrence. He goes to 66, so I'm just going to grab my guys. And I do not, Pete, I've been stumping for this a little bit. I don't support the Deontay Johnson flippening of George Pickens.
I've seen you raging on Twitter, really going through it with your feelings there. Although I did want to push back, like you had some reply where you said he's like Deontay Johnson's being propped up by dumb analysts. Like literally all the smartest people I know, Siegel, Pat, Leone, are all in on Deontay Johnson. So
I didn't are going to have analysts. I said I should have phrased it a little bit differently, but there are a lot of dumb analysts propping him up too. I mean, I guess there are some smart ones. The issue is that everybody's propping him up, which I think is always a bad sign for any single player when everybody's converging on them being this guy. And again, Deontay Johnson's up 14 picks in ADP, 13 picks in ADP in the last 2 weeks. I just think the time of year, the fact that it's May and now Deontay Johnson's getting steamed up, he's a popular player for casuals. And whenever you are, as a sharp data person, closely aligning with the casuals, I think that you are running into a potential chalk disaster.
Yeah, I just think like my take on, and I've said this before, both Pickens and Deontay Johnson are good bets. Both of them are bets on Kenny Pickett taking a leap. George Pickens is a more risk reward bet. We have seen his type of profile boom and bust accordingly. Deontay Johnson is just a safer bet. And I think Deontay Johnson is more uncorrelated from Kenny Pickett performance than even George Pickens. Like I can envision scenarios where Deontay Johnson has a little more TD regression, i.e. he scores at least more than one touchdown this year and has a decent year paying off that tag. Whereas Pickens could be all over the map. If Pickett fails, I don't really see Pickens having a big year. Obviously, if Pickett does take the leap, then Pickens is going to come along for the ride. But I do think there is more risk with the Pickens selection. The reward is definitely greater, but there is more risk there.
I just believe in a guy who's a little bit bigger, had a great athletic profile coming out of college. And Deontay Johnson, I'll point out the thing that I did say in the tweet that Pete mentioned, 85th out of 85, according to defensive adjusted yards after replacement, one of Football Outsiders proprietary stats, and also 81st out of 85 in terms of receivers and DVOA. So analytically, Deontay Johnson did nothing besides earn targets. And there you go, Anthony Richardson goes. So I'm glad he's not going too low in ADP these days.
I feel like he's all over the map. I'm sure you saw Spags. I did get my first share of Anthony Richardson, and I even broke my own rule. I got bullied by the ship chasing guys into selecting him a couple picks ahead of ADP the other day. Very down sad about that.
I think it was good for you to finally break your cherry on that one. Certainly a player that I will stump for and continue to stump for. And people, too, I think are starting to read a little bit into, Gardner Minshew was running all the first team reps in one of the practices. That was only one of the media days they had. Supposedly one of the other days, it was Richardson taking all the first team reps as well. So I think there's a little bit of tea leaf reading going on with him that is incorrect. Just watch the highlight real quick. Watch Pat McAfee spazzing out over him, throwing a pass on the run. I think that's what the AR that we want to see.
So this draft has broke cleanly for me as far as from like an ADP pocket portion of the draft. And we should recap for the audio listeners here. I'm now through 8 rounds. I have J.K. Dobbins at running back, still no quarterbacks, but I have 6 wide receivers now: CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Waddle, Amari Cooper, JSN, Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers. So I've ripped off 3 straight rookie running backs. Zay Flowers, obviously building on this big Baltimore bet I have, obviously sans Lamar. And then I do have Mark Andrews at tight end. But again, another nice thing, the first 4 selections I made at wide receiver, when I tacked on JSN, gave me another out for a mid-range quarterback stacking partner. So decided to keep hammering wide receiver there, knowing I'm going to have 3 to 4 different cracks at getting stacks I like at this next pick.
Here's the thing that I just need to point out real fast. Where'd that go? Isn't A-Rich a casual guy too? Fun, young, mobile QB. Casual players don't like players who haven't played in the league before. That's the first part. Unless I guess they're a buzzy rookie running back. That'd be the one thing. They do tend to think that Anthony Richardson has to show it on the field. So that's my take. And then this guy is just giving contrarian takes for everything. But A-Rich is missing everybody. He's going to be a big bust. It's June. It's just turned June. I think this is where we perhaps need to dial it back a little bit. Perhaps I'm too over enthusiastic. That's making people push back more. But Jesus Christ, Pete, I cannot take the ill-informed AR fudding. And I'll say that you're one of the brain trust leaders who's led that charge.
Sure. Anthony Richardson is fine. I would say Anthony Richardson is a best ball mania underdog darling. Everyone on this site loves him. People, general casual fans on Twitter hate him. They say he sucks. He's not accurate or whatever. That's where the disconnect is for me. Someone was mentioning that my exposures weren't updated. So I did just go to the Brick Draft Caddy to get that updated. So you can in fact see that I did select Dalvin Cook in a draft yesterday.
So I took a weird pathway here. I think this team is kind of interesting, Pete. I got 3 Jacksonville Jaguars, no Trevor Lawrence, 2 Pittsburgh Steelers. Maybe I'll take Kenny Pickett later. We'll find out. You have the bet on Cincinnati and KC combined here. I think this team is an interesting thought experiment, if not an actual live team.
Well, you're doing, this is the thing people get tripped up on. And I am curious, we didn't really get to talk about it. If Trevor Lawrence would have fell to you at 71, would you have taken him?
Probably. I mean, I tend to like Lawrence the best when he's coming in the 80s because that does happen in some rooms. And it's kind of interesting because people love taking him in the 40s too. I've heard people go like, oh, I think he should be going higher than this guy. It's like, I don't think he should be going higher than Justin Fields. But to me, like, I don't mind the bet on Jacksonville without making a bet on Trevor Lawrence because frankly, I don't think Trevor Lawrence himself is a great play. I think the offense is kind of a great play. And I think if we're going to go 1-to-1 in a given week, like Mahomes can beat out Trevor Lawrence. So I think it probably got saved by myself by not taking Trevor Lawrence.
I agree with that take. Although I will say, like, when you reach for Calvin Ridley and took Christian Kirk a few picks ahead of ADP, like, then you need that offense to smash so hard that I think you can start to, then offset that with a Trevor Lawrence ADP value. But the point I was going to make too is like, you want to be building out these team level correlations even without the quarterback. Like, I just watched young Doug take an unstacked Tua despite having Jalen Hurts and despite only having 2 wide receivers. But I'm completely fine with Miami, Baltimore mini correlation bet, and I'm going to get stacks with other teams. Like, you still want stacks. You can only have so many quarterbacks, and you still want to access the benefits of that game going off, even if you don't have the quarterback.
Yeah, I think I naturally end up on more on the running back wide receiver pairings without a QB than I do 2 wide receivers without a QB. But I do like all these receivers for the most part, or at least I like, sort of the bet on them. Like like Pete mentioned last week, like I don't mind the bet on Deontay Johnson as a vessel for a bet on Pickett. I think that's okay. I just think Deontay Johnson's a little bit overrated by the people who are starting to draft right now. But I think overall, like I like the way this team is shaping up. I think I got myself out of a little bit of an early burial by not taking receivers. So we'll see how it goes. But what are you going to do here?
So I am going to have to take Geno Smith here. We saw a huge run on my quarterbacks. Tua goes, Dak goes, and Deshaun Watson. And then I take a look at Amy's team here, who has Tyler Lockett and 0 QBs. And so I know with the 2 picks there's a very high likelihood that Geno's not coming back. I want to lock up one of my stacks there. So I'm going to do a little reachy reach to make sure I get a quarterback here.
Yep, I think that makes sense. Certainly Geno, a guy that another fungible ADP guy that can sometimes go at 100, can sometimes go at 120. And Pete is as good at anybody as reading the room here. And I think getting Geno where you did, probably the wise move.
Do you see Amy go ahead and grab Jared Goff there, high ahead of ADP, but knowing that Goff probably isn't coming back 24, 25 some picks. So now I have to make a decision here about how I want to play this. I think I'm probably going to have to end up building out one little backdoor stack late. I'm going to go ahead and grab A-Chain here and just build out this Miami Ravens bet. So I now have Dobbins and A-Chain. I have Waddle and Mark Andrews. Obviously no Tua, obviously no Lamar. The thing I was wrestling with there, Spags, was would I want to take Daniel Jones, be done at quarterback, knowing there's so many backdoor options with Daniel Jones to tack on? The other thing I was struggling with, though, is like I'm at 6 wide receivers through 87. That's a lot of good capital spent. I'm probably only drafting 1 more wide receiver. And so knowing I'm going to want to get a stack with a quarterback who's not already on my team, I'm thinking I might have a better opportunity to do that at another spot and trying to take advantage of this running back sweet spot. But it was close for me there. I almost went Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I think you would have ended up a little bit too thin at running back if you waited longer, but it's all relative to comfort. Like even if I do, take running backs in the 11th round, like that's not ideal according to the RotoViz, like roster construction explorer data. Certainly not an ideal move, but you could still get pockets of guys where you're getting your Roshans, you're getting your Deonta Foremans, you're getting your, Damian Harris's. There's a lot of guys I think you can go on that run for. I'm on the clock here, though. I am going to reach for Sky Moore a little bit just so I can have somebody correlating with Patrick Mahomes as everybody else goes in front of me. So that is my sixth receiver. And we ended up on similar builds despite different journeys too there.
Yeah, and I do. Amy in the chat confirming she wanted Gino there. Amy, this was trickle down economics because if Tua doesn't go at 97, there's a very good chance Tua falls to me at 106, or maybe even the Tyreek Hill drafter takes him and then Dak slides to me or whatever. So I'm sorry. It was a domino effect there of our stacks getting wiped out as number one lights their entry fee on fire.
And I got two Chiefs here. I got Jerick McKinnon as well to add to my Sky Moore. So certainly a unique Chiefs stack. I feel like you're probably getting maybe two of Rashee Rice and Sky Moore, and probably not getting one of the shitty running backs without one of the other good receivers. So I feel like McKinnon and Sky Moore, if nothing else, going to be a unique build to add to my my overall very unique build.
Yeah. Brent Ross says A-Chain as a number 2. If you don't like A-Chain as a number 2, check out my team I drafted yesterday where A-Chain was my number 1.
I think this is really that time of the year, and I don't want to go on our usual rants or my usual rants about other channels and whatever. I think that this is part of why some channels, Pete, really do skyrocket, because they give the takes that people want to hear, which is like, yeah, Devin A-Chain, I don't know, feels pretty thin in week 17. Kendre Miller, I don't think he's going to play over Jamal Williams. Like, I think there's a comfort to that, and I think that's the itch that Pete, we are never going to scratch in the right way.
No, and now we got guys like Pious Devil in the chat doing the Denny Carter bit. Really love your wide receivers, but your running backs seem thin. It's like, no fucking shit, because I'm jacked up at every other position. Let me see your teams, and I will tell you how thin you are at wide receiver 4 because you took 2 or 3 running backs early. Honestly, though, I love these rooms because a lot of times on my best ball breakfast, I am the one that's forced into taking the running backs in round 3 or round 4 because I don't have any good wide receiver value. So I love getting to do some true zero RB rooms like this. It is my preferred way to draft. And I am always going to take advantage of that when I get a room that's conducive for it.
Yeah, that zero RB run where you start in like the 10th round and you start with Charbonnet and then just reel off a bunch of rookies that are in pretty good spots. I like a lot. Ideally a mix though of rookies and guys who are going to have roles in the beginning of the year. Because as I've talked about, like my best teams last year were zero RBs, but I wish I'd prop up some of the guys that got there at the end of the year with guys that were good in the beginning of the year. But what are you going to do here, Pete?
I'm going to grab a running back here. I'm going to grab Eli Mitchell. So now we have a J.K. Dobbins, Devin A-Chain, Eli Mitchell. This was something I was talking about with Hertzik the other day too, as far as when you are doing zero RB rooms, and we had started with, I think we had 3 straight rookie running backs. We then started to think, how do we get enough early season production to buoy this room until the chaos of the season kicks in? He ended up pointing out Jamal Williams, who was actually buried in Pat's ranks. I'm not a Jamal Williams guy, but on that team, it made a ton of sense of like, who's a guy who could fall into the end zone a couple times at the start of the year and keep this team afloat until the rookies really kick in. Eli Mitchell is a guy for me here who I think helps me do that on a team with A-Chain, Dobbins. Eli Mitchell, I think, is going to be getting 10 to 15 touches right out of the gate and have some good goal line equity there, in addition to his contingent upside with CMC.
Eli Mitchell, one of my most exposed running backs, so I don't really have an issue with that one. I think he's a really nice value. And again, he's one of those guys too that, sort of a bet against McCaffrey, but also a bet that can get there even if McCaffrey's great. And they do want to save McCaffrey until the playoffs because it's a team with Super Bowl aspirations. So Mitchell to me, just an undervalued play who I think should be a part of a lot of zero RB builds if people are trying to go that way.
Yeah, for sure. And I got him a little bit at a discount here. What did he go? Yeah, ADP of 123. Yeah. I get him at 130. John Kelly does take Kendre, who I was going to select if he fell there. And now I'm trying to figure out how I want to play this. I think what I might do here is set up, I have the Quentin Johnston. I might set up a backdoor stack with Russell Wilson. I was mentioning how I wanted to find a signal caller who had an option for me late in drafts, whether that's Dulcich, Mims, Tim Patrick. I'll have an option there. And then I do have the bring back with Quentin Johnston. And then this will allow me to get back to hammering running backs. I like Jalen Warren, Roshan Johnson, some of these guys here, but it would have been a reach. And I think the pocket that will fall to me at the next pick, like looking at the quarterback versus running back 2v2s, kind of like just being done at quarterback and pulling the trigger on Russ.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Certainly starting to thin out a little bit at QB, and you don't have a correlation with Carr, you don't have a correlation with Love, so I think that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to see. There's one player I would like to fall to me, so prepare to watch me be sad when he does not. We'll see. I guess I have a couple outs. Here. I'll be fine. The tension, Pete, when you're on stream and not knowing if the person's watching the stream and if they know the player you want to take, like that's been the big pull for me recently, where it really is a crapshoot. People are watching our streams and drafting against us, and they also know the kind of players, like the same kind of players, and I'm sweating this one out.
Yeah, I'm just at peace with it. I now just telegraph. I mean, on my stream with Hertzik yesterday, we were like, oh yeah, this will line up perfectly at picks 84 and 85 to double stack Lamar Jackson with Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers. Just like completely telegraphing it. If people want to make suboptimal picks for Snipes, then they can go ahead and do that. I can still build good teams.
Yeah, so I wanted Jalen Warren there, did get him. So that's a player too. That's like, you don't have to have Pittsburgh Steelers to want Jalen Warren. I think he's a buzzy enough name, and people also assume, which I think correctly, that he'll have a role from day one and also have contingent value, whether Najee Harris is hurt or if he just doesn't get there. I'm on the clock again though, so I'm torn, Pete, between Joe. I have Joe Mixon, so I could increase my Cincinnati bet with Irv Smith, or I can go tank Bigsby and get pretty close to done at running back. What would you do?
That is interesting. I would probably go Bigsby just because you have such a big bet on Jacksonville that you basically just need the Chiefs and the Jags to absolutely smash. I also, let me see. You were debating between Irv.
Yeah, I like Irv, I think, more than you do though, but
yeah. I also will say, and again, this goes back, kind of arguing against myself with the chalk combos. This is just anecdotal, but I see so many Travis Kelce, Irv Smith combos at tight end. It'd be just because it makes sense, right? Of like, if you spend that early one, you're probably not going to spend a mid-round pick on a tight end. And then you're looking for that correlation. And if you have got shut out of like, say, T. Higgins and Chase, it's like Irv is the last guy standing there to get week 17 correlation. So, if you're finding ways to get unique stacks around that game. And so the last point on Tank, and so you took Jalen Warren and Tank Bigsby, and I actually just wrote about these guys in the Fantasy Life newsletter, looking at some ADP trends, because Warren and Tank are two of the biggest risers right now at running back, along with Jerome Ford, and they all fall into a similar thematic bucket in that the market is now getting confident with them as the running back 2 on their team. And we know drafting these running back 2s is extremely valuable. And so I think you are grabbing the end of a tier there. I say that as Roshan Johnson slips past ADP here a good bit. I need to keep building out my 0 RB room. I definitely like Roshan at pick 154.
Yeah, I like Roshan overall. I mean, I know that it's sort of hard because we like a lot of these rookie running backs in this range, and I think they are more appropriately priced than they were last year, where some of these guys were going, the equivalents were going a little bit cheaper. But Roshan to me is just one of those guys where there's a pathway there. They've already kind of said some OTA quotes about Khalil Herbert being expected to be the lead guy, but not the only guy. So I think that certainly bodes well for Roshan, a guy who does a little bit of pass game blocking, a little bit of pass game catching as well, and also can run the ball really well against 8-man boxes is one of the college stats that jumped out for him. So Roshan I love as a pick, but I think he made more sense for you than he probably did for me.
In my take, so I mentioned the Dolphins backfield, the Saints backfield, and the Bears backfield. There's 9 running backs there, all going in the double-digit rounds. Outside of Alvin Kamara, who I'm not targeting, I like all 8 of those other running backs. And I guess you could throw Jamal Williams in. He's probably out on it too. And why I like Kendre so much. But that is something that I have been prioritizing because the market is like, I don't know what to do with this backfield. And it's like, well, one of these guys is going to absolutely smash their ADP here. I might do I want to do the handcuff, the Bears backfield or the Miami one? We will run out the all track team, Devin A-Chain, Raheem Mostert combo there. This going back to kind of the conversation we were having, about the RB2 tier here, the guys we feel confident in their jobs or their role, Foreman, Wilson, Tajay Spears, Chuba, Jerome Ford. And then after that, it really starts to get to be the Wild West there. So I was hoping to get Dulcich, was the guy I was thinking of for a Denver stack, but John continues to snipe me. We are basically dueling on opposite sides of the Charger Denver stack. And so he grabs Dulcich for his bring back, but I should have a couple more cracks at Denver bringbacks if I need here.
So are you in the group now that the handcuffing is okay, but only for like teams like Miami, Washington, like where there's kind of a, they can both get there in concert, but also it makes sense that one of them will be there, be good for the beginning of the year and one will be good for the back half of the year?
Yeah, that's it. To me, it all comes down to opportunity cost, right? And, I use the example, if you take Saquon Barkley and you're taking Matt Breida, something like that, or you take Jonathan Taylor and you're taking Deion Jackson or Evan Hull, for those two backs to hit, for the second back to hit, you need your first or second round pick to get injured. Whereas when you take, Deontay Foreman and Roshan, or whatever kind of combo of these back, Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert, those guys could and should have a standalone value. They have massive contingent upside, and the opportunity cost is so low in the 160s here. Like, we are truly in, when you look at the historical hit rates of these picks, from round 13 on, they are very, very low hit rate guys. And I think using two spots on guys where it can work out in multiple ways, right? They can have standalone value together, or they can have contingent value, or you could have the scenario where it's like Jeff Wilson's the lead back for the first 6 weeks, gets hurt, and then it's, Devin Achane down the back stretch. So I think there's tons of ways it can work out. And if the opportunity cost is low, I don't mind it.
Yeah, I think I just hit my pockets pretty well. Got Kenny Pickett, was a little bit worried about young Doug taking him, just because young Doug seems to be a man who doesn't live by the laws of the rest of us out here. But got Pickett here. Also got Jerome Ford. So I'm done at running back. And honestly, for, I guess, not really a full zero RB room, I feel pretty good about Mixon, Charbonnet, McKinnon, Warren, Bigsby, Ford. Like, it's a good mix of guys who will have a role and could have a bigger role.
Yeah, I like how you have recovered there. You have some big bets on Pittsburgh, KC, Jacksonville. You do get your bringbacks in there. So I haven't done a ton of teams like that where I'm like super, super overweight 3 teams, but I do like those. Especially, I do think those are the teams that are actually built really well for the regular season prize. Because if you hit on the 2 to 3 offenses, obviously the Chiefs are not flying under the radar at all. But say you nail the Steelers being the undervalued team, this year's Jags, where they take the leap, that's how you really supercharge a regular season team with that massive team level correlation.
And I know there's been some people kind of talking about the concept of overstacking a little bit more, and the risk profile of that. I really feel like my best teams last year were the ones that veered a little bit closer to overstacking both the team, like not more than 4 guys usually, but had a good share of a team, and then also some of the week 17 bringbacks. So I feel pretty comfortable about going 3 to 4 guys for the most part. But what are you going to do here?
Yeah, I'm going to grab another running back. I'm definitely a 6 RB build here, probably 7. So I'm debating right now between Spears and Hubbard, who I have equal amounts of right now. I'm now using every little thing to break ties, and I will do my JSN Tajay Spears week 16 correlation here and grab Tajay.
I'm surprised you took Tajay, I guess the week 17 of it, but Chuba's right there waiting for you, and he kind of fits your thesis of the running back room as well.
Right, but I have also gotten some more immediate season production here. So you can now see I do have 3 rookies and 3 veteran backs here. And there's a chance Chuba comes back. And if not, I might pivot to another position. Although I might be also looking at, a late tight end build for sure. Yeah, I want to get a Broncos bring back. And that leaves me with 3 more picks. A running back, a Broncos bring back, and another tight end, I think is what I'm looking at. So Chuba does come back. So I will grab Chuba and be done here with a 7 running back build. 0 RB room, J.K. Dobbins, Devin Achane, Eli Mitchell, Roshan Johnson, Raheem Mostert, Tajay Spears, and Chuba Hubbard.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm torn here because I think I'm good at 6. Like, I feel like Mixon is what makes me particularly good at 6. I also feel like 7 running backs is a little bit like the data doesn't fully support 7 running backs as much as you would think. So I've been trying to cap myself at 6 for the most part, but you can make the case that a 7th running back would work for me, or a 7th receiver, and then obviously one more tight end.
Yeah, let me
Good
see
goal.
your. Yeah, you're at a 2.661. Yeah, you have you kind of have a lot of flexibility there as far as structurally. I mean, I think you're done at running back most likely.
Yeah, I think so too. Definitely want to get some more correlations in here. Would like to get some Carolina players for that Week 17 correlation with Jacksonville, but we'll see who's going to be
This is
available left.
this would be one of those spots where I've now become more open to the idea of like a three tight end room. I think I could see you potentially tacking on two tight ends with Ingram if those ended up being the best values on the board.
Interesting. Yeah,
But
I like that you're waking up to the 3 tight end builds, by the way.
what's the process? I have a Bayesian mindset here. The big selling point for me on it is, and it's more having to do with the time we're drafting right now. The tight ends at the end of the draft, there are so many starting tight ends that have job security that we just know are going to be out on the field. Like no one drafts fucking Cade Otton, and he's the starting tight end on the Bucks. Trey McBride, starting tight end on the Cardinals. There's these guys who have job security, and if we're avoiding dead roster spots, those late tight ends are a really good way to do it. Whereas when you're taking these running backs in this range, now these guys could be the third running back on their team. You're taking wide receivers who could be the wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5. So that has been really the big selling point for me. And it's based on capital, right? I prefer elite tight end. If I miss out on it, it's nice to have that out and knowing that those guys are all just hanging around at the end of the draft.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. I think that's a reasonable way to look at it. I like taking 3 tight ends when you do just go completely late at the position, but I'm actually going to reach for a guy here who's getting some positive camp reports, but does fit my want to get some Week 17 correlation for Carolina. Just took Hayden Hurst, and now I'm taking Terrace Marshall, who goes in the 17th sometimes now, still a 210 ADP, but I seen him get jumped enough on me that I'm going to get him now.
Yeah, Terrace Marshall and Laviska Shenault getting buzz for the 6th year in a row. I think both of them are. Pat got me to take Visca on one team. I think Terrace Marshall's a good pick. And I mean, both those guys are free. One comment here that this is okay. So why all the Charbonnet love? Still not understanding it. Walker is the guy, will be the guy, and Charbonnet is going to be riding the pine like I did in high school. Last year, the exact same things were said about Kenneth Walker and Rashad Penny. It's not, if you bank an early season standalone role for Charbonnet, like that's just a bonus. You are making a high upside contingent value bet. We have seen Alexander Madison in previous years go only a couple picks behind or a couple rounds behind where I'm going to go ahead and get my double stack with Gino here with Noah Fant behind where Charbonnet is going right now. And all Madison is needed is a couple of spike weeks to pay off a 13th and 14th round cost. Charbonnet going in the 10th and 11th. All you need is Kenneth Walker, who isn't necessarily a picture of health, missing a few weeks, and Charbonnet with a 25 plus point upside game can pay off that draft cost. And that's in like the kind of median outcome scenarios where Kenneth Walker misses a couple games. If you get Rashad Penny gets hurt situation like we did last year, then you have a league winner with Kenneth Walker, who is going at the exact same price that Charbonnet. So you got to open up your mind to the contingent upside of drafting. We aren't drafting based off of median projections when we make these selections.
And also Charbonnet might be a better player than Walker, and they kind of just used Walker because they had to last year. They also seem to like McIntosh. So Charbonnet to me is a guy that should get some pass game work, but McIntosh is kind of a pure pass down back based on how he performed in college and what they're using him at so far. But I think both those running backs, like you could take Charbonnet, you could take McIntosh, but it doesn't mean they're bad bets just because Kenneth Walker was good last year. He actually wasn't that good in any sort of advanced analytic, which, people sometimes miss. Tim Patrick closes it out for you.
Tim Patrick, wasn't going to raw dog Russell Wilson there unstacked. I was hoping to get Marvin Mims or Dulcich when I first selected him, but Mims went really early in this one. Where did Mims go? 153. I guess not super early. This guy, and then Dulcich went 155. So those would have been my preferred backdoor. But I do really like Tim Patrick because one, I think Tim Patrick's good, and two, I think he has some upside in one, maybe Mims is a bust. I've been drafting a ton of Mims. I hope that's not the case, but Patrick could be out on the field a lot if Mims is slow to get going. And two, if the Broncos trade a wide receiver, which continues to be rumored, by the trade deadline. Tim Patrick, if Sutton gets traded, I mean, Tim Patrick's out there on the field in all 3 wide receiver sets for the Broncos down the stretch. So I kind of like Tim Patrick in this range where we're looking at the Richie James and the Quez Watkinses of the world. I think he stands out a cut above those guys.
Also, I just want to kind of pull up. I don't want to just beat up on this guy, Captain Osmo, spelled differently than this former site Osmo and the player Osmo. Kenneth Walker started last year with a hernia. That was why he wasn't playing. He wasn't riding the pine. He was hurt to start the year. So if you're going to dig your heels in on the takes, at least know the how and why for everything. And that's part of what the how and why was. They went heavier with Penny early because Walker wasn't ready to go.
Yeah.
But even still, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter even if you didn't know that context. I think it's still, you take the young guy who they just spent a 3rd round pick on.
And I think the thing that blows people's minds is, here's the thing. Kenneth Walker is an awesome selection too in drafts. I love Kenneth Walker's price in the mid to late 5th when he falls there. Basically what is happening is both of their prices are discounted relative to the uncertainty of the backfield. But when an injury or someone climbs to the top of the depth chart, if Charbonnet sucks, Kenneth Walker is a 2nd round value. If Kenneth Walker is riding the pine, then Kenneth Walker is a 2nd round value. If Kenneth Walker or Charbonnet forces a timeshare right out of the gate, Charbonnet is massively undervalued. So these ADPs are baking in that ambiguity, and you are actually getting discounts on both players at their current prices.
Pete, for me, would you go a 3rd tight end build with Darnell Washington or take the crowd favorite Justin Ross to cap my wide receiver room?
I think that the paths to Darnell Washington being fantasy relevant this year are very, very thin. So I would take the buzziest guy on Twitter right now, and Justin Ross, to stack with your 2nd pick.
I think Darnell Washington has a pathway to relevance. I don't think he's going to get an immediate pass game role, but he's such a good blocker that they're going to probably have him out there in 2 tight end sets and hopefully find out that he's a better pass game player. But I agree, Ross is a little fun. I don't take a lot of Justin Ross, so I'll take him here to get some more Chiefs in the building.
So let's I think I missed what did you end up doing? Oh yeah, that you had the Terrace Marshall, Hayden Hurst. You were debating the 3rd tight end there. My only thing, I think 3 tight ends made sense, but I don't think you necessarily had to force it with Darnell Washington, like McBride, Woods, Henry, Musgrave. If there was anything else, I'm trying to see if you had any other correlation there for a 3rd tight end. But honestly, you didn't need to, but when you have Patrick Mahomes, you really want to double stack Patrick Mahomes. So getting both Sky Moore and Justin Ross, I definitely get the value of going there, but I think you could have argued for a 3rd tight end in this build.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the Ingram part of it. I think if he's going to be good this year, I think the bet on him does sort of say that he'll be good, but that he'll be a core part of my team, hopefully. Do you want to read your team out here to service the audio listeners, which I know is always a priority for Pete?
Yes. For the audio listeners, I ended up getting to do a little modified 0 RB room here. Another 2-7-7-2 build. This is the same structure I did yesterday with 0 RB. My quarterbacks, Geno Smith and Russell Wilson. My running backs, J.K. Dobbins, the controversial Devin A-Chain. Feels pretty thin as your number 2, Pete. Eli Mitchell, Roshan Johnson, Raheem Mostert, Tajay Spears, who does, in fact, play the Texans twice in the fantasy playoffs, and Chuba Hubbard at running back. My wide receivers, pretty good. CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Waddle, Amari Cooper, JSN, Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers, and the tacked-on stack of Tim Patrick. 2 tight ends, Mark Andrews, Noah Fant.
And then my team here is going to be Patrick Mahomes, Kenny Pickett at QB, running back Joe Mixon, Zach Charbonnet, Jerick McKinnon, Jalen Warren, Tank Bigsby, and Jerome Ford. Receiver, Jamar Chase, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Sky Moore, Terrace Marshall, and Justin Ross. And tight end, Evan Ingram, Hayden Hurst. Pete, this team started weirdly for me, but I did mark this as a favorite, a team to watch in my portfolio.
Wait, how do you actually annotate that in practice?
I just put an X. I put an X at the end. X marks the spot, Pete.
Yeah, I honestly liked how you recovered in this draft. I did not like your rounds 2 through 5 and how the Mahomes set you up for the having to reach with Ridley, passing on that other elite back, and then having to reach on Kirk. Not really, I guess just a little bit, but I think that sent you into some weird pockets of the draft. But I do think you recovered pretty nicely in getting that double stack, selecting your nemesis, Deontay Johnson. I didn't cover that enough, that you bit the bullet and selected such an awful pick. It's almost like correlation does ultimately trump everything, Pat.
No, people
Spags.
think that I'm just a pure player takes guy, but I care about the structure more than anything, and I feel pretty good about the structure. Of course, if you're hanging on here waiting for a second draft, it is going to be on the Splash Play channel coming up in a moment there. Pete and I will quickly change outfits, dust ourselves off, get over there. No, it'll be really fast, but we will do a second draft of BBM4 coming up on at Splash Play Pod, of course, the Splash Play YouTube channel. Pete, give the plugs here because you've been crushing it with all the views that you've been getting here lately. So the duck mascots popping up all over. What are the big plugs?
Yeah, we do have to come up with a name for that duck, though. I mean, you really pointed out a whole flaw in that merch rollout. Yeah, so same deal as always. Anytime I draft a Best Ball Mania team, it is eligible for the comment giveaway. I think I'm now only 1,300 subs away from hitting our 15K goal, which will unlock the $1,500 giveaway. The way you enter that giveaway is simple. The second these shows are done, this one and the following show over on the Splash Play channel, you leave a comment. That comment will get you an entry. Live comments do not count. I have no way to track those. At the end of the summer, or when I hit 15K subs, I will, and I'm going to have to roll up my sleeves to do that. I actually think there's some tech ways I can do this. I will go and get all those comments. You get one entry per streamed video. And I've even made it so easy for you. I have a playlist on my channel with all 150 of my streamed drafts. You can go through those, watch them, leave comments, and get as many entries as you're willing to leave comments for. And Spags, this one is eligible the second we end, and then we will have another draft immediately after this over on Splash Play.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun here. And of course, if you enjoy Pete and my banter, not only do you get the second draft coming up, I think tomorrow we're doing a stream over on 4for4, the Best Ball Happy Hour with John Daigle. So we both got to ask together. Poor Pete has to have me on his coattails on another show, but that'll be fun, Pete. A bonus Wednesday. We don't normally get each other on Wednesdays.
I haven't gotten to check out the show yet, but the vibe, they normally get like 4 or 5 people on that stream shooting the shit. So excited to bring big Splash Play energy over to 4for4 tomorrow.
And we're going to bring that big Splash Play energy over to the Splash Play channel right now. So come hang out with us there. And of course, check out Pete's double stream tomorrow with both Pat Crane and Sean Siegel at the same time. We'll see you guys on the Splash Play channel. Bye.
Peace.